in 1989, HTTP was invented by Ernest Scott Levy. And then think about the entrepreneurs building on top of that, and think about the dot-com collapse in 99, 10 years after, right? And how many people said the internet's dead at that time, right? Paul Krugman talked about the internet being no better than a fax machine, I think in 1998, right? So this is 10 years later that then that was still being said. And in 2007, this came out with the same technology stack, that's a HTTP, like TCP IP, and this technology stack to lead to HTTP that is doing this Zoom call today. So it took a whole bunch of time to be able to have entrepreneurs create value for other people. And so that's emerging right now.
Welcome to the Rose Show podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I have the honor of being here with a true visionary leader, Jeff Booth. He's a technology entrepreneur and best-selling author of this amazing book, The Price of Tomorrow. I suggest everyone read this book. Excellent, excellent writing. And he's the founder and partner of Ego Death Capital. And we're going to be talking lots about that today. Co-founder of Addy and Knock Knock, and also Build Direct, great companies that you've built there. And you, Jeff, are at the forefront of the transition from an economic system built for the past and one built for the future. So how you doing today over there in Vancouver, Jeff?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. And just so exciting. What an exciting time to be alive. And you're definitely at the center of this great space of Bitcoin. So I want to start with the news and current events. This Bitcoin ETF, the finally getting approved. What are your thoughts on that and the game theory creative destruction in action in the space?
I think it's broadly gives a whole bunch of new people who were scared of this asset class some knowledge of this asset class. You're going to have some of the largest financial institutions in the world now talking about this asset class as a store of value and important and really important. So I think that's broadly a good thing. I'm hopeful that people do more diligence than just the ETF and understand how to hold it in self-custody, because this is an asset class that is decentralized and secure, and that means you don't have to pay fees to be able to hold this and get the value from it. And in fact, the best way to hold it is in self-custody.
Agree completely. Not your keys, not your coins, a popular term that we use, but absolutely. There's nothing like the Bitcoin asset class itself. It moves differently, and with its inelastic finite supply of 21 million, definitely one that cannot be manipulated. Very important during these times. So, I want to go into your Ego Death Capital. It's a venture capital firm that you founded back in 2021, and it directly invests in companies in this Bitcoin ecosystem. Could you tell us about that and the thinking of that and your focus?
Yeah, I started it with Andy and Nico a number of years ago, and we had a thesis that most people misunderstood Bitcoin like to a staggering degree, and the financial world would misunderstand it. And it carried off the book that I wrote, and essentially the book being that prices fall to the marginal cost of production in economics. That means the free market is deflationary, and you had technology moving faster and faster and faster, exponentially faster, meaning we should live in a world where every year we get richer by the abundance flowing through to us in the form of lower prices. So that's the world we should live in. But that world was incongruent with the financial system that we had created. And the financial system we created required prices to move higher, and to create inflation to be able to pay back insolvent debt. And I realized that as the world moved forward, one system, the one driven by technology, would move faster and faster, which would cause a problem with the existing system, meaning it would have to debase our currencies faster and faster to stay solvent. And so Bitcoin became, and then I tried to disprove that hypothesis that I just shared. So I laid it out in my book, and then I tried to disprove it, and tried to, where would, if Bitcoin was something that was truly decentralized and secure and hard capped, and I'm saying at the time, if it was, then it would in turn reprice the entire world, because nobody could control it. There was no games that could be played that could control it in the long term. And so that's a bit, because the world's never seen something like that. We've always used gold, or we've used the paper currencies or something else, and then we keep repeating this problem throughout history. And the world had never seen a technology like this that was truly decentralized and secure and hard capped. I realized how hard it would be to understand. And so I wanted to go through the work to be able to understand, is this true? Is it a first time in history that we've seen something like this, and could it be repeated? And for me, I came up with the answer is the first time, and it couldn't be repeated because of the design and what this looked like. And that in turn would change everything else. At that time on the thesis for the fund, though, what we realized is it wouldn't just be a new base layer, essentially repricing falling prices everywhere. And most people were pricing from a system that prices were going up. So it is an example. My house 3.5 years ago was 1.4 million. Today it's 2.1 million. But in Bitcoin, it was 300 Bitcoin, and today it's 35 Bitcoin. So it is repricing everything, not just some things. It's repricing everything. And so what we realize is, but it looks more like a protocol than a company. And that protocol layer would mean the asset itself, being the protocol, would do one thing, decentralized and secure, but it couldn't do much else. And it was limited by 5 to 7 transactions per second. It would, and which created a whole opportunity for other people effectively to, and I don't, this, maybe they didn't know they were scamming people, but all of the other coins would look like Ponzi schemes against something like this. And by nature of the design would have to look like Ponzi schemes on it. So we realized that Bitcoin was the only thing worth holding. But more important, there was layers being built on top of that were early, that would bring an entirely new use case to on top of Bitcoin, meaning it would turn into, in time, a peer-to-peer internet. It would be the new internet that would replace the internet as we see today. And so when we had that thesis just over 2 years ago, we raised 25 million plus another 7.5 million in an SPV. And it took a very disciplined approach to what type of companies could be both enablers of the transition by creating massive value for users, and participate in the transition. And so far, Fund One has been just a massive success. Like the companies were really proud of the entrepreneurs, really proud of what's happening in the system. And so we just raised we're raising a second fund of 100 million to build on top of it. So you literally have a transition between one system kind of built for the past and one system that's being built for the future. And that transition is, I was early into the internet, and I remember the same conversations similar to now about Bitcoin as the internet. People forget what they used to say about the internet and what use cases it would have. But I remember really well, because when I went to be able to build on the internet, everyone told me I was crazy. And this is, and this feels bigger than the internet. If you understand the extraordinary talent, the people around this, if it's a bigger deal than the internet, because it not just is something that provides all of this value, it also resolves the conflict of a system needing to grow forever by manipulating money and stealing wealth and time from societies that does so.
I love that. Well said. There's so many amazing principles in there. We're going to break it down for everyone. It's that manipulation. We've been brainwashed and conditioned to think of money in the old way. And with massive debt, inflation, the hidden tax, and continued money printing and manipulation of fiat money, and Bitcoin being the hardest money ever created, there's nothing like it. Jeff, you are a visionist and you see the future. And, as an entrepreneur, we fail often, and that's key. It's important to fail, and we learn and we build better and stronger. So, what I want to know from you is, what do you see in this new economic system with Bitcoin? What do you see for the future for all of us?
So it depends. I don't know where your listeners are on their adventure into this. If they've just starting to understand Bitcoin, or where do they see it as an asset class? Do they even see it as that? Do they see it as a Ponzi scheme?
No,
So
I think most of my people are at least middle of the road and very familiar with it as an asset. I've had Michael Saylor on and we talked in
yeah,
depth with all this. So please feel free to be yourself
yeah,
and just tell us how it is.
yeah. So when you're viewing the world from something that isn't negotiating with the world, right? It's imposing its discipline on the world. And every economist would, nobody argues with my thesis about prices falling to the marginal cost of production. Nobody argues with the thesis of, in a world where technology is moving faster and faster, and we invent the technology that moves faster and faster, then that means prices should fall faster and faster, because prices fall the marginal cost of production. So you have to ask, what's the marginal cost of production of a line of code? Zero. What's the marginal cost of a line of code created by other lines of code where AI is going? Zero. What about the marginal cost of production of those lines of code created into a machine or a robot that is now falling in price and doing all the other labor? You can see where things are going. All those prices go to zero or near. And then those robots will farm for us and food will be free. And those robots will do other things for us, and all of those prices will fall too. But if we live in a system that has to extract that wealth from us, then all of those things become that system that should be giving us abundance is instead extracting it from us. And as it extracts from us, it must centralize further and lie to us, because it's not based on the truth. It's not based on the free market. It must make government bigger, control us more, essentially shut all the doors and lock us into a system that steals our time. So we are, in fact, it looks like modern day slavery, where somebody is benefiting from the manipulation of money, and the rest of the people are getting extracted from. And so people that are that are benefiting from the manipulation of money do nothing for society. They don't have to deliver value to society like the free market does. So it gets worse and worse. But now everybody in society, I think it's easier sometimes if you use an analogy. And if you said, in the Monopoly game, right? You go around the board, and let's say somebody holds all the assets, and normally that game would be tipped over. People would kick it over, and you'd start a new game, or the game would end and you'd start a new game. But what if the game couldn't end? What if you created a system that, instead of getting $200 in pass and go and not being able to make around the board where the game would end, the next time around they said, we'll give you 300. But then all the food prices and asset prices just went up, so you didn't make it around the board again. Then the next time around the board they gave you 400. And you could see that it would look like slavery. You'd be stuck in a system thinking you were doing something well, and you would actually probably vote for more money. You'd probably vote for, I need $300 or $400, and it would get worse. So that is the system we live in today, in the monetary system we live in. And Bitcoin is the exact opposite of that system. It's precisely opposite. That system has to look like that because it's a debt-based system that must grow forever by manipulating money. Essentially, when you say 2% inflation rate, it's worse than a 2% inflation rate. So the target rate, because the natural state of market should reduce prices by about 5% a year and getting faster and faster. So it's actually, even if it was a 2% inflation rate, it's probably a 7% inflation rate. So, and now replace inflation, because you don't have a vote in inflation. Inflation, change the word inflation to theft, because it's unnatural. It's not the natural market. It's made up money to be able to create prices that go up unnaturally, and it takes from some people and gives to others. So when you understand that and you realize, but unfortunately, most of those same people will vote for more theft, unaware that it'll hurt them further. You can see society is going to play out, and that system is going to get stronger and stronger over some people. And then some people are going to move to this new system that is repricing everything. It's repricing the world through the new system, and it doesn't care. It doesn't care about me. It doesn't care. It's just, all it is an honest ledger. And if you're participating in the honest ledger, you're repricing everything else too. And so what does that look like over time? This is a big concept because we've never seen this in history. So we don't have any reference point to what this looks like in history, because winners write the history books. So there is no reference point. So what you have to do is you have to say, you have to infer, and that's what I've done all my life in technology. You have to infer what would happen, or look at what would happen on a set of new rules, and how would people react to a set of new rules as they become there, and what happens. And what I think I find most profound about this is, I believe it's a over time you'll have a higher level of consciousness of society through operating on an honest ledger that is just an honest ledger that is a mere reflection of the best in us. So it's the best in us creating something for the best for us.
I love that. An honest ledger, much needed. You touched some key points there. Inflation, the hidden tax. Inflation is cumulative. So I agree with you. I think it's in the 7% and even higher range. And with more money printing coming with this massive fiscal spending that we have going on. And I have to reference your book again. Now, you mentioned Ray Dalio's 4 points of how we get out of this massive debt. And it seems that of the 4, and I'll mention them for the non-readers and the ones who will soon be readers of this book, transfer of wealth, taxation of the rich, restructuring, the debt restructuring, or cut back on spending. That's not going to happen. They're not going to stop their spending. We know that already. So what's the last option that's left? They're going to be printing more money. And we already see the Feds injecting liquidity with the BTFP, and they're always finding ways to inject liquidity. So it will and it shall continue. So we do need an honest ledger that doesn't constantly get debased and devalued. So those are key points there. And this future looks so beautiful. And I have to ask you, Jeff, where is this abundance right now going? I know it's into inflation. Where do you see that things will actually change? Because as you say in your book, technology is deflationary and it cannot be stopped.
And so the existing system can go on for a long time, based on the belief that people have that that's the only way to get to work. So they will vote in more. If you look at politics today, it's mostly theater, because both political parties, it's really, where will I take my printed money, and who will I give that steals from everybody, and who will I give more of it to? Is really all politics all over the world. That's what unfortunately it looks like when you get this late in the system. Ray Dalio, even on those things, there is actually no way from his ways that what he's laid out to be able to solve this. It's mathematically impossible. If you try to pay back the debt at $1 per second, the global debt right now, and I'm not talking unfunded liabilities, I'm just talking known liabilities, it would take 12,873,000 years to pay back at $1 a second. The debt is already insolvent. And if you haven't heard that again, say it again. The debt is insolvent. And every single thing you do inside that system is saying, I'm paying for the insolvent debt through my work and time. I'm staying stuck and paying for the insolvent debt. It's already insolvent. And you can move to Bitcoin and not pay for insolvent debt. It's a rebuilding of a transition of a system that's emerging. So, but people get so scared, and what keeps them stuck is they're scared of what will it look like. And what I'm getting at is it already looks like that. I'm already living in the future. I see abundance. I see abundance all the time. Every year, things get cheaper for me because I'm measuring in Bitcoin. Every year, I see more people, more beautiful minds joining this network that's encoding the best in us for the best for us, and it gets stronger. And so I'm already fully living in that future, and I just wish more people were as well. But most people will measure this. They'll measure Bitcoin price in the fiat instrument instead of the other way around, Bitcoin repricing everything, and they'll stay stuck as a result. And then they'll listen to their politicians who require more manipulation of money. And by the way, and this is important because it's not just them making mistakes. We can tell ourselves an easy lie, right? We can tell ourselves it's somebody else's job to fix this, right? And we take away our self-responsibility in doing that. And if you know that prices fall to the marginal cost of production, if you know that technology is moving faster, if you know that a free market is deflationary, then there is only one way to solve that. It's Bitcoin, because every single other thing, because what I would say is a lot of people are sitting there living in this system and saying, you need to tax me less, you need to do this, those bad people. Well, they continue to get more money in that system, trying to win enough to protect their family inside that system, making it stronger, fighting within that system, making it stronger. And if a politician in that system said, listen, here's the hard facts. Prices are supposed to fall. We have a system that doesn't look like that. And every year you're going to get richer, but your income might fall in that new system, right? But prices will fall faster than your income. You or most people that are listening to this podcast would laugh that person out of there. There's no chance they're unelectable. So it's not just those people. We're the people, and we need a system that is built for the best in us. And so Bitcoin can't, and that's the piece, because we wouldn't make the choice unless it was self-interested. And that self-interested system, through your repricing it, also builds a better world.
Yes, it does. I refer to it as bread and circuses. It's like a distraction in theater of what's going on. And we just need to wake up and understand that there is a better way. And we have to question things and think different. And I always mention that, and I write that on my website, think different. We just need to know that. Like, I love that point that you make, and you've mentioned it on many of your podcasts and your articles, that prices should fall to the marginal cost of production. And that's very important. And we need to question why. Your technology is deflationary concept, and that's been diluted over time. We know we're in a new era right now with AI, blockchain, Internet of Things. It's like a revolution, 3 revolutions going on right now, Bitcoin at the center of it all. And we're not seeing prices come down, and we're seeing prices elevated. What are your thoughts on companies such as NVIDIA, AMD, Microsoft, these companies that are heavily into technology, in AI, semis. Do you believe that in this old system that we're in right now, will these companies become and remain the leaders as they're able to use their cash that they're generating and increase their margins because of that technology being deflationary?
So when measured from one system, yes. So when measured from the fiat system, then yes, they get stronger and stronger as they reduce labor to and use technology to do more with less. And they're the biggest beneficiaries because we try to store our money in the companies because we both use that technology because it's providing us more value, and then we go store our money in the S&P or the Magnificent Seven, those companies, so it loses less money. So it's not them, it's us, right? We're using the technology. They're providing us, making our lives better, and we're going and investing our money in so it loses less money in them, making them stronger as they do this. And that accelerates and accelerates and accelerates. And that's what you're seeing today. The S&P would be negative without the top 7 companies. And so every index fund and all the retirement funds of the world have to be in them and higher allocation, because otherwise a retirement fund would go broke and people would suffer. So that's why it looks like that. And it's a function of that system. So yes, when looking from that system, but Bitcoin is repricing all of it. So you could invest in Microsoft, you can invest in Tesla, you can invest in Nvidia, but you'll have a higher return because you're pre-pricing it all in Bitcoin. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. People are so invested in that system and they think that they're getting a return. It's just losing money less fast than holding it in cash, but it's still losing money when you compare it to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is repricing everything. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of new companies, new I would say you could call them utility type companies on top of Bitcoin that are the new Amazons of the world, the new Nvidias of the world, building on a peer-to-peer internet that most people can't see yet. And they're going to get that. They're going to become that by providing so much value that bring billions of people onto Bitcoin. And so that's what we're investing in. And what that means in a fund is what we think is actually happening is we're going to get venture type returns on top of a venture type asset because our companies are collecting more Bitcoin by creating so much value.
Well said. Just a slow transition. We're just moving over to this new way. And when things are changing, there's a lot of fear. And people tend to have fear of the unknown and uncertainty, but there really is no reason to have fear. Things are only going to get better. And I agree with you. They certainly can't get worse than what we're at right now with all of this that's going on.
No, they can and they will, unfortunately. But again, I need to know for how I look at things, and this is so I understand both systems. I understand human nature. I understand what the existing system is going to get a lot worse, because it has to, mathematically it has to, and that may lead to expanding wars and everything else, and it may lead to, likely, because it needs to have a control function to make you believe it's somebody else's fault. It has to lead to divide. And so if you think where we are on that transition today from that existing system that is already insolvent, and they can't let it collapse because every bank would close, it would be, so it can't collapse. So it's easier to create a control structure and make you think it's somebody else's fault. All of that's still coming. So if you think it's bad today, it's still coming. Now you could take a look and say that's really depressing. And some people say, how can you think like this and know this, how to sleep at night? I need to know, for me, it's like my house might burn down one day, and I want to have a fire escape in case it does. And it doesn't mean I think my house is going to burn down. It's just I want to know. And so I wanted to know exactly how the financial system is wired, and exactly how it does, what this looks like and how it does it, so that I could understand. And then I did the same thing on Bitcoin, so I could understand the transition. And now what I do is I spend my time advocating for the system that I would like to see my kids grow up in. And so well, I know that all of these things are going to happen. Um, I can't believe I get to do what I get to do with the people I get to do it. So I'm probably I'm a huge optimist. I'm not an optimist if you said there wasn't an exit hatch. But I'm huge optimist on this transition path and what this looks like. It's so powerful.
Agree completely. The future is bright. There will be difficult times ahead, and I think they keep kicking the can down the road, especially now with an election year that we have. But I think there will be pain, but it will bring us a brighter future, and I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. I agree with you there. I'm also an optimist. So, could you tell us, Jeff, how people can release that fear and take part in this new economic system of Bitcoin? Do you have some ideas for our listeners?
Yeah. So, and again, I think what happens with Bitcoin, and I say what happens with me. So first I dismissed it, or first I didn't have the time to look at it. I was too busy in the existing system, right? Too busy making money, creating wealth for my own family and everything else. And I dismissed it, and it kept on coming. And then I looked, and then I was interested. I was interested enough to make a small investment, and then I kept looking, and then I tried to disprove it, and I got more and more into it. And now I'm investing all of my time on top of it and with people. And so where somebody is on that path, right, depends on the next thing that they'll do to be able to get further down that path. I certainly wouldn't want people just to go into Bitcoin because I said go into Bitcoin. They need to do the work to understand, is what Jeff's saying here true? Is it decentralized and secure? Is it hard capped? Is there any way to kill it? And if they still think there is, then maybe for them, it's a risk going into Bitcoin. I don't see it a risk at all. I measure risk. So most people only measure risk of a new system rather than the risk that they have. In fact, I would say entrepreneurs, really good entrepreneurs, are probably the most risk adverse people you'd know. They just allocate risk better. So they realize that if they're in an existing system working for somebody else, that also has risk. You just don't realize it has the same risk. And working for yourself or creating value for somebody else that you're in control of might seem risky, but if you allocated risk properly, if you're good at then you realize even if you failed, you would learn something and you would be further ahead. So 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 I would say I'm a good risk allocator, and I measure risk of both systems. And that's what people would need to do. They would have to truly go through, okay, now I understand all the risks of Bitcoin, and you'll see as you go deeper and deeper, in my mind, those are very small probability events, extraordinarily small probability events, that there's risk there. And they would and then they would, okay, what about the risk of the existing system? And that what they would see is if I think if they did that truthfully and honestly with themselves through that process, they would see the amount of risk that they think is in Bitcoin is not in Bitcoin. It's in the existing system that they're in and they're spending all their time in. And from then they would go, like I did. And what am I doing making this system? Why am I 90% in the system that's failing and only 10% in the system that's winning? And you shift your time and attention to the one that's winning. Now, depending where somebody is on that journey, I can't tell like where are they in that journey. But as they get to the end of that journey or deeper in that journey, then they'll start to see all of the opportunity in the new system. And that opportunity in an open monetary network that is open to anybody to start doing anything, creating value, creates limitless opportunity to create value, and get paid in Bitcoin and get paid by advancing that. And as they see some of the people around there that were willing to help them and emerge, that's why it's hard to say where somebody else is and why their minds would change. But if they were looking at the risk and seeing what I see, it's a no-brainer. It's a complete no-brainer. I can't believe more people aren't doing it.
I think of it as the best asymmetric risk profile out there. So I think, Occam's razor, you talk about it in your book. Sometimes the simplest solution is much preferred over the more complex, and it seems to be just so simple, Bitcoin. And so I want to go into your mindset, because that's very important for people to understand. It's a systems thinking approach, looking at the entire system. You've been referring to the economic system of the future, Bitcoin. And I love your quote on your website, jeffbooth.com. Watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. I love that quote myself. It's great that you referenced that. Let's talk about that quote and what it means to you and your systems thinking approach and your mindset, and how you look at this creative destruction that's going on, and the timing and all the mass innovation with Bitcoin that it's bringing in.
Okay, this is a deep topic, at least in
I
how I
love
think
it.
of this. I believe we don't see the world as the world is. I believe we see the world as a reflection of our consciousness, who we are. And often we are trying to, and so I've used this many times, but if you just said a victim archetype, so you probably know somebody who is a victim, and love and belonging is the most important thing in our lives. We want it for we say it's other things, but it's ability to love and belonging is the key driver of everything we do. And so how does that victim show up, and how did it the first time they were a victim, everybody came racing, and they get it. And then over and over time, everybody's talking behind that person's back, wasting their time, wasting the other person's time, when they have a sign on their forehead that tells everybody exactly who they are. But and if you just kind of said, why are they like that? I know the why. I know it's because of love and belonging. Why doesn't anybody tell them? Why can't they hear it? And is their reality true for them? Yes, it's true for them. It's completely true. And would that reality see the same type of opportunity in the world that I would see? No, it's just a different reflection back at you. So it's a mirror reflection. The world is a mirror reflection of your own belief sets. And if you're looking at the mirror reflection of the world instead through anger, you'll find a whole bunch of people in your little community who are similarly angry, and it'll feel like love. And for you to leave that spot and go to another spot, a higher level of consciousness, is really hard, because it feels like you're leaving the love to get there. Um, and so you tell yourself this over and over and over again, and you stay stuck. And and so how that relates to, I'm constantly curious that if this exists in everybody else, it must exist in me too, because I see it in everyone I meet. And that's not to say, and I also see the opposite side of that is there's brilliance in every single person I meet too. And so I'm trying to look at for what they tell themselves to create that brilliance, and what their special thing is, and celebrate that, while also understanding what is the thing that they're hiding from themselves. And And if everybody else is doing that, I must be too. And so what are my things? And that it just allows me to see about better, I would say, those things that take me to a different level. They could be in business, they could be in relationships, they could be in anything. But let me see things that I never saw before.
That's beautiful. And I agree completely. Our realities, our worlds are a reflection of our inner world and our inner selves and what we want to see in the world. Thinking in this new economic system, not the old system. No reason to get down about it and upset. There's a beautiful world out there. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's very enlightening. I love that. Just great stuff. I want to talk about groupthink. And that's a big deal nowadays. This people just not even thinking anymore. And there's a lot of biases in decision making and echo chambers, filter bubbles. You reference it in your book as well. That's an important concept. And I think that's possibly what's holding people back from breaking away from the old system and moving on to this newer, greater system. What are your thoughts on the decision making, the biases, the anchoring, the frame? I always say framing is everything, and loss aversion is real. And people have all this fear. What are your thoughts on this rise in groupthink and polarity and separation that's going on between the left and the right?
Well, you just mentioned it, even in Bitcoiners, that you should be together with people that think the same, but that's not necessarily true. There's people that think all differently that can bring more into your own thinking too. That as long, I think what ends up happening is the same thing is it creates an in-group bias and an out-group bias, and that in-group bias or out-group bias defines you. So now you're a Bitcoiner and that defines you. And that means, what does that mean? Right? Does it mean you can't like somebody else who isn't? Right? Does it mean like, what does it mean that you're smart about everything? Does it mean like there is a certain amount of things that you have to go through to Bitcoin to be able to understand how it plays in the world against the misinformation that we see. So then it's easy to think everybody's part of that misinformation and they are all wrong and you're right. But what you end up doing by doing so is you actually push those people away further. And you ask yourself, why? Why would I do that? Right? If I really cared about Bitcoin, if I really cared about people, then the last thing I would want to do is push more people away. Right? I would want to meet them where they are, so that they could understand and I would want to see from their perspective, objectively, what it was that I didn't see. And through that, I just don't know, like in that case, I just don't get why. I think in Twitter and or any social media, these things play back and forth on us because they're meant to play back and forth on us to sell more advertising. It looks more important in our world, and we keep on reinforcing that. And those things that kind of shock us sell more advertising. They travel faster. So we're stuck in that system, and we think the world looks like that, and we keep on playing back into that system, and we make the world look like that because we think the world looks like that when it doesn't at all. And it doesn't. And I would say I've traveled to 80 something countries, and I can tell you, when you meet people all over the world, wherever some of the places that people would have this bias of those people are like this, it doesn't look like that on the ground. People are beautiful everywhere. The same hopes, same dreams, want the same for their family. Yes, some people have terrible, what they've been through is horrific. But when you actually get below the surface to who people are, we're all the same.
We are all the same. And it's important to try to see the similarities and reach out and help one another. And we share information. It shouldn't be hidden, just like the hidden tax of inflation. We're just here to help others. And that's why we're here today. So excellent points. Jeff, share with us some biohacks, they're called, or some ways that you think differently so we can be familiar with, just different ways of looking at things and hopefully can help transition them to this new world that we're entering.
Because when you say things like how those people, or and all those people, it's just a natural state that you think it looks like that. But every individual, every you, are many different types of people, right? In this, you show up this way. Yeah, I am the same. If people knew the kind of what it all looked like, you don't have time to go into every little thing. So that's what the world looks like. And there's lots of places to meet people with where that you agree. And or and then I'm going to tie this into, it is our ego that protects us from seeing the truth. That's what happens. And so let's say somebody says something about you on social media and you react. Why do you react? Like, why do you react at all? Like if somebody says something negative about you on social media, so it's either they're trying to get a rise out of you,
Mhm.
or to hack your attention so that they can be seen. They're uh, they're uh, they're right and you're wrong. Um, and then you've learned something, right? And you should say thank you. Or they're just like, or they're just kind of an asshole that you just don't like. Why, like, and why do you even think about it twice? But if you understand how powerful that is, and I'm not saying everybody, I'm saying you and me, understand how powerful that is, and why do people react, right? And it's not what somebody said, it's because that's just words. It's what the interpretation of what was said about them, about their ego, why they do it, right? So if somebody attacks Bitcoin, it's attacking, I do it because I'm helping everybody else, and you're attacking my personal character, right? And that's a story you're making up, but so I don't know why. I ask myself why. So if that would be just that hack alone, if you've diverted that attention from that into building people up, into spending time actually being curious, and then also questioning yourself and saying, why did I get triggered on that? You'll see it's not the words that trigger you, it's what you think the words say about you, which is your insight for learning.
I love that. That's why you call ego death capital. It's basically our egos get hurt. And so we respond and we attack back or something, when actually we should question ourselves as, why did that bother me so much? And the true growth is in helping and building others and giving to others and sharing information and knowledge. And when we get attacked, and I always say it's best to just ignore, and just move on. Obviously that person whoever it was that did something, said something, maybe it usually has to do with them more than us.
Totally. And then but if you just think about that, somebody could say 10 nice things about you in a day, and one person says something bad about you, and your day's ruined. And you kind of, huh, that's interesting. And they just pause and say, that's interesting, right? Why would that be?
Absolutely. And I have to quote your website, Ego Death Capital, which is a very cool site. What many fear and resist as an end, we recognize as a beginning with potential for all. For a new system to thrive, to bring abundance, opportunity, and accessibility, the old system must self-destruct. For this to happen, it will require a phase of self-surrender and transition. First, an awakening, then resistance to a false sense of loss, then disillusion and deconstruction, then exploration, and finally, enlightenment. Jeff, I have to ask you, when did you have your enlightenment?
That's a so and even ego death. It's a. I think this is a path, and it's no. It's you're never there. I just I think for me, when I see things when I see things in other people and them repeating mistakes, I realize I'm just a person too, right? And so I must do the same thing, and I try to do it less. And I try to use all these hacks to be able to try to make first my life better, my time better, and then those same things that I used to make mistakes with, I try to help others with the same with this because when you used to do something wrong and you saw the result in your life, and then you say what you did to be able to solve it, sometimes helps other people.
Well said. That's true. We're always on the journey towards enlightenment, and we're always learning, making mistakes. Failure is part of the process, and learning as we go along. And then when we see those mistakes in others, it's although it's difficult for their ego sometimes to remind them. I do that with my children all the time. Well, they're teens now, but we see those mistakes and we want to point that out, and hopefully we can help them shorten that feedback loop and improve and grow as well. I mean, that's what we're here to do, to elevate humanity, have abundance for all. And that's the key. And I think that's our duty and why we're here. So I want to know if you could give us some type of timeline for people. And I know it's difficult. We're 2024, January right now. What is this timeline that you see, a rough timeline for Bitcoin economic system to be more center stage for all, not just, people who are working in this space, but more mainstream for Bitcoin? And do you believe that Bitcoin will surpass fiat currency as a global reserve asset and a store of value as well as money?
I believe it's a new financial system, and it's less than 1% today probably hold it, and a far less than that, like 1% of that 1% understand it to the nature of what's happening. So it's such a tiny number of people that understand it, and that will grow over time, but it'll transition. It's not the and probably more important is it's already happening. So you like when that question's asked, and you just realize how many people don't understand it yet, because it's happening right now. It's happening as we speak. It's happening for the last 3 years, happened for the last 5 years, happened for the last 10 years. It's happening now. It happened for the next year. And the only difference is more people will be on the new system measuring all prices falling, and less people will be on the old system measuring prices going up. But to go from 1% to 100%, and then have them understanding, and then the 100% understanding how much value can be created here, that's going to take a long time. But it doesn't matter. You don't have to wait. You can front run governments, you can front run institutions, you can front run every single person on this planet has an opportunity to go right now, and it's happening right now. There is no time that it happens.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. The transition has been going on. But yeah, I think it's just going to keep growing, and there's going to be mass.
It has to. It's repricing it's repricing everything, and everything I just said there is objectively true. It's
Yeah.
the if it stays decentralized and secure, it's inevitable that it keeps on going. It'll be volatile on the way through, but the only volatile nature of the on the way through is the volatility of saving money rather than losing money, right? That's you're talking about the inverse of the system that we're on. And so you imagine with now that base formation, how strong secure it is, and what it looks like. It's more decentralized, more secure every year. And what's happening, and the knowledge, and this knowledge is starting to become, people are starting to understand. The 99% are at least hearing it more often. what do you think is going to happen as all of the entrepreneurs race in and create value on top of it? And this is just important. It is really important to think about timing rolling out. In 1989, HTTP was invented by
Mm,
Ernest Scott Levy. And then think about the entrepreneurs building on top of that, and think about the dot-com collapse in 99, 10 years after, right? And how many people said the internet's dead at that time, right? Paul Krugman talked about the internet being no better than a fax machine, I think in 1998,
mhm.
right? So this is 10 years later that then that was still being said. And in 2007, this came out with the same technology stack, that's a HTTP, like TCP IP, and this technology stack to lead to HTTP that is doing this Zoom call today. So it took a whole bunch of time to be able to have entrepreneurs create value for other people. And so that's emerging right now. And those entrepreneurs that are building this value inside this, and what's going to come out of this value, it's it that's why it's so hard to say this time. Because if you ask somebody in 19, like, so now let's compare these. Lightning on top of Bitcoin came
Mm.
out, call it 4 years ago, and it's really just starting. It's grown 20 something thousand% in the last 2 years, but from a very small base. And so now you can transact with anyone around the world on Lightning. But how many people know that? For a fraction of a penny, how many people even know that? Right. And so now that would look like HTTP on top of and so we're early. We're really early in what's happening, and entrepreneurs are racing to that space, and they're going to build the world in front of us, and you won't know that this is here until it's here.
Yes. It's by bringing up those excellent examples from the past, and about how the internet, they said that the internet's no greater than a fax machine. Krugman said that blows people away, that wow, and the internet's everything nowadays. I don't know how we could even have this meeting without the internet.
You want
And
one you want one worse for Krugman? I found this was so
yes,
10
so
10 years after that, he's in defending that. He said, I shouldn't know about technology. I'm an economist. And when technology is the driving force of all economies, it's like
absolutely.
it's so staggering that so listen, think about what you're hearing through the fiat lens, and what's it's
I
staggering.
say that's protection of his ego.
Right,
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 right. Because
right.
that makes no sense. Technology is everything and everywhere, and that's the key to growth in the future. Now, Jeff, what does it mean to live in the Bitcoin economic system? Could you share with us what that means for you?
Yeah, what it means is, I think is it's just the output of what we just said. You create value for others by creating value for others, and that's how you gain more Bitcoin in time. So so there has never been in history a technology that is faster, cheaper, um, more secure, and open that's ever lost to a technology that's closed, costs more, and everything else. So this is not going to be the first, and it will take some time. But what that means, living in that system, means you're constantly creating value for other people, and if you create more value for a while, then you'll do better because of doing better for more people. But there will be no there's no way to create a monopoly in that, because you're constantly fighting to create more value against entrepreneurs creating more value. So if you try to create a monopoly type structure in that, you couldn't. You have to create it. So it forces the world into that, which would be really scary if if the only way you create wealth is by extracting wealth from other people. That would be really scary. And that's why you can see it's just such a change.
Absolutely.
It's such a change, such a mind shift change that imposes that on society. How for people that are measuring their wealth in the fiat system, they won't know that that's even happening. They're going to keep extracting and everything else. But but just like I said, with Bitcoin being the top asset in over the last, and you name whatever number of years, right? You can see it's repricing everything.
Absolutely. It's important. That's a beautiful concept for humanity. And I always say Bitcoin is elevates humanity and gives hope for the future, because we're not here to take from others, rather to give to others. And it's through giving, it's like we elevate together and we create more abundance. And that's why we're here, to do good for the world. And so thank you so much for everything, Jeff. Please tell our audience how they can follow you. Of course, I recommend to all The Price of Tomorrow, and how they can find out more about Ego Death Capital.
The website egodeath.capital, you can find some more about Ego Death Capital, or my personal website, jeffbooth.ca.
Awesome times, exciting times. I like to say we live in a great time period, lots of fun things coming forward, and we're going to be watching Ego Death Capital and all the amazing Bitcoin companies that your firm will be investing in. So thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. It is an incredible time to be alive.
I love that. And very hopeful and positive for the future. It's only going to get better.
Thanks.